Hey friends, welcome back to Break the Box Podcast. I'm your girl Kalina. Listen, around here, we keep it real, we keep it bold, and we make Jesus make sense. So grab your coffee and come hang out. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to Break the Box Podcast. I hope you have been enjoying the last few episodes. We are on our road to 100. We're almost there. Today I have a really special guest who is a newer friend of mine, but somebody that I get to do some really cool ministry with that I feel like has such an incredible message that I believe is really going to just impact your heart. And I actually think is going to be very relatable to so many of you. And so today, Break the Box, will you help me welcome Rick Martinez? What up, Rick? How are you today?
Hey, Kalina, how are you? I'm
I'm
good. I'm good.
Good. I'm so happy to have you on. I know we've, had so many conversations, and I always think like, man, I got to get Rick on here. And so it was the perfect time. I'm super happy for you to be here today.
Awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Heck
I've
yeah.
seen it. I've seen a lot of episodes, and the conversations you have are so
hmm
great. They're so deep.
Thank you. Yeah.
And there's such a strong message with every different one.
Yeah.
And so
Thank
I'm
you. I
super
appreciate
excited,
that.
super humbled too, just to be asked. So
Of
thank you.
course. Of course. Well, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. So, Rick and I are friends. We actually work together in a ministry called the Rivers Edge Ranch, where we're both on the board. So, we've gotten to know each other quite a bit over this last year of doing some ministry together. But just for the listeners, tell them a little bit about yourself, where you're from, so we can kind of have some context, and then we're going to jump in.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Rick Martinez. I grew up in Redlands, California, so
Really
I'm a local, yeah.
nice.
And I went to high school here. I did move to Texas for about 7 years
Really?
of my
What part of
life.
Texas?
It was Killeen, Texas, and then Temple, Texas. So I was like 45 minutes from Austin, so it's
Okay. Okay.
central.
Yeah. I have
So
lots
I
of
did
family out
my
there. So I was like, how cool.
yeah, I did elementary, and then I was in 6th and 7th grade in Texas, and then I moved back home to California in the 7th grade. So,
Okay.
yeah, it was a little bit
Cool.
a culture shock
I can
because
imagine.
being in Texas for 7 years, it's a lot different than being in
It's
California, so
way different. But at least you
and I
came
was
over
gone.
as like a kid. So you kind of still got to like grow
Yeah,
in your adulthood in Cali. Okay.
yeah, but I was saying "y'all" a lot, so
Oh,
I
I
got
still say y'all. Uh-huh.
people
Yeah.
were like, "What?"
Yeah.
So,
I have
yeah,
like
so
my Nana and all of them are all from Texas. So all it takes is like one visit and I come back and I'm like, how y'all doing? Like it just comes out.
yeah.
You don't even realize it. Yeah.
I did lose it, but yeah, I was saying that for a while. But yeah, so I went to high school
Mm,
in Redlands High School, and
yeah.
yeah, and we know each other from doing the ministry, the Rivers Edge
Yeah.
Ranch, something that's
Yeah.
near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure we'll
Big
talk
time.
about it a little bit today. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, that's what I do it for ministry and job. I work for Ralph's and Food for Life, so I do
Let's
refrigeration
go.
and stuff. So the Lord's
Heck
blessed me
yeah.
with a good job like that.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, so thank you for sharing all that. So Rick and I met through this ministry that, like you mentioned, that we have a big heart for, and it is a drug and alcohol rehab program that helps people who have been through addiction or in addiction and need kind of that second step to kind of get out of it. And one of the things that I love and why I even wanted Rick to come on here is not only has he been able to be a part of a program like that, but he actually has now turned around and is helping other people who are coming behind him so that they can have the same freedom that he's been able to experience. And we know so much of addiction kind of affects pretty much, I think, like 3 out of 5 families in
Hmm.
America today. I think everybody has even just somebody that's a cousin or an aunt or someone that has
Yeah.
went through this. And so I just really wanted you to come on today because I feel like you have such a great story of going through something so difficult, but also being on the other side of it now and looking back and helping others. But I kind of want to jump into this part. So you told me even recently that your addiction kind of started like when you were in high school. So will you tell me like how did that kind of start? What was it like, and what was kind of that open door that kind of led you in?
Yeah, so it did start when I was young. I was about 14 years old, and yeah, I played a lot of sports. So I was in baseball, I was in football, and so I met a lot of people, a lot of my friends from sports, and I had a real best friend, and he was a wild kid.
Yeah.
I wasn't so wild. I was
hmm
kind of more of a timid kid, but when I was with him, it was kinda different, he kinda brought that out of me, and I felt more comfortable to just be outgoing and doing all that, and so we hung out a lot. I was always at his house, and we were always going out and doing stuff, and he's the one that, introduced me to marijuana when I was 14, and, they say it's a gateway, to other things, and I 100% agree. Because for me, at least in my story, it was definitely, a gateway because I started when I was 14, and, the first time I did it, it was different, but it didn't it was scary at first until after I tried it, and then it wasn't the fear was kinda gone. It was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I survived that," you know, like,
Yeah.
fine. And then he wanted to do it all the time, and so I was like, "Oh, yeah, let's, all the
Like, it's
time.
just a
Sure,
thing.
why not?"
Now were
Yeah.
you, like, told growing up, like, "Don't do drugs, to stay away from that stuff," like, was it always in the back of your mind, or were you kinda raised in that kind of a, culture of, like, these are things that we stay away from, or was it just something that was a little more unknown?
You know what's interesting? So I mentioned I lived in Texas, right? In Texas, it was never mentioned. I never knew anybody that did anything. Obviously, I was only in sixth or seventh grade, anyways. But when I came back to California,
Yeah,
it's a whole different
it's a
lifestyle.
different
It's a
game
whole
out here.
different culture. Yeah,
Mhm.
and so there was seventh graders doing all that and
Yeah.
and doing other stuff, and it was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, and it was still for me, it was like, "Oh, okay, I see them, but I'm not into that." I'm not gonna follow that crowd. I would hear about it, all the students would hear about the people in your
Sure.
grade doing certain things,
Yeah.
and then it wasn't until I met him that, something inside of me was like, "Oh, I wanna be accepted, I wanna be cool, I wanna be," I don't wanna be that guy that doesn't wanna do anything and is kinda
Right.
lame, and
Right.
so once he introduced it, I did it. It wasn't bad, and so I kinda just kept going, but it was like a I lived 2 different lives, and
So
so it
you were,
was
like,
very
secretive,
secret.
like nobody else knew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, me, him, and then a couple other guys that were into it would do it, and that was just smoking weed, and then, I kinda gravitated as I kept doing it to other people that would do it, guys in higher grades than me. I was a freshman, I would chill with sophomores, I would chill with juniors, I would chill with seniors, all because we all did the same thing.
Right. So it
Yeah,
kind of in
so
some ways, it made you feel like you fit in because it was such a
absolutely.
trend. It was almost like if you didn't, it would automatically make you the outsider. But if anything, it was almost like not just a gateway to other things, but a gateway to like other friendships and circles and feeling accepted. I think that's super common today. Like if you're the kid who's not doing drugs or not drinking, you're kind of the weird kid, right? You're the outsider. And I think sometimes people forget that there is such a culture, specifically in California and probably in certain states as well, where it is so normal. We're actually encouraging these younger people to go against the odds. We're not just like,
Yeah,
hey, 5% of kids are doing this. It's like 95% of the kids are going to do
yeah,
this. And we need you to see like why you don't want to participate. But I can totally understand. I remember being young and like, who doesn't want to fit in? Who doesn't want to be with the older kids? Who doesn't want to feel cool? And I think it's just that little subtle thing that opens that door. And I love that you even said like, it wasn't a big deal. Like I was just talking to my youth kids about this a couple Sundays ago. I said, "Sometimes sin is fun," and they all went, "Right?" And I was like, "No," I was like, it's true, like, there are things that we do that actually can bring pleasure and feel good, but they're not good for us. Just because it feels good doesn't mean it is good, right?" And I think that's the other misconception is people think like, "Oh, I'm gonna do drugs and I'm gonna feel terrible," but the truth is getting high can feel fun sometimes, and it can
mhm,
actually be very like, if you got a stressful life, it can feel like, "Hey, that all faded away for a minute," right? And so there's a hard thing because your brain is going, hey, this is actually nice and this is an escape and it's not hurting me, but you don't realize the effects that it's having on other parts of your brain and in your decision making, right? So, like, at what point did you realize it was getting out of control? Like, you started, you're hanging out with people, but at what point did you kind of see that turn where you realize, oh my gosh, there's an addiction, or did you not even realize for a long time?
so yeah, so no, I didn't, and for a long time. I'm talking
Yeah.
a very long time, into my
Yeah.
20s, that I
Wow.
never saw it as an issue, as a problem, um, because, you know, I by the time I was a senior, I had tried just about everything, and I was doing just about everything, and even when I was 14, I was drinking liquor, beer. I actually got in trouble, for minor in possession of alcohol when I was 14. So they took my license, and then when I was a junior, I got caught again, and they took my license for another year. So I didn't even drive for
Wow.
most of my high school years.
Yeah.
Um, and it was all because, I didn't see a problem, right? All my
Mm-hmm.
friends were doing it. It
Yeah.
was a cool thing. It wasn't messing up anything, as far as like I didn't feel like I was addicted to anything.
Right.
I'm just going to parties. I'm just having
Yeah.
fun.
You're
These are
enjoying life.
party
Mm-hmm.
drugs. Yeah, and so, no, I didn't see a problem until way, way later.
Wow. Was there like a moment, something that you felt like happened, or was it people on the outside looking in going, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing this"?
It wasn't until I got to, I guess you can say more hardcore drugs that I noticed there was a problem because, some drugs, I mean, most drugs, but I guess I wasn't doing it in the pace that it would, bring about withdrawals to where your body needs it. So, I never had those. What
Oh, so like
into
you were
my
always ahead of the game, like it was just always flowing, so you never felt like what it felt like to come off of it.
Yeah, well, and I did mostly weed, like marijuana. That was the thing, and so you don't it wasn't as bad
Yeah,
as if you were gonna do something more
yeah.
hardcore as far as that goes. Um, so when I got to those kind of drugs and I graduated to those kind of drugs,
Then you
that's
felt the
when
shift.
I felt the body was like, "Oh, I need this,"
I need this.
or you're gonna feel sick or bad or you're not gonna
Yeah,
feel normal. And
yeah,
that's when I knew there was a problem.
yeah.
Not
You were
enough
like,
to stop, but, that's when
isn't
I
that
knew
crazy?
there was
You
a
know,
problem.
like
Yeah,
something's wrong, but were you would you call yourself like a functional addict? Like you were
for a
good and
little
you could
bit.
have conversations and you could like handle stuff oh for a while, but then at some point it like spun out where like you couldn't quite show up on time and be at places you needed to be or like for work or stuff like that.
Yeah, I often say you're a functional addict until become dysfunctional, you
Hmm.
stop working. It's kinda like that little
Yeah.
electronic thing that's works until it's just not working anymore. All your little tricks don't keep it how your charger,
You get
sometimes
caught
you
up.
gotta bend it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to get it to charge
Yeah.
sometimes, and then
The
eventually it's like,
cord.
"God, it ain't working no more. It's not
That is
working.
such
You're
a good I
broke."
remember that, like, when you
Yeah,
like, I do that, you go to plug it in, you, like, turn it, you
I've
wait for
had
the little
many.
charger, and you're like, "It's
Yeah,
fine," but that's true, it almost slowly over time doesn't work the way it's supposed to, and then one day you're just like, "It's still fine," but you're like, "No, you're supposed to just be able to plug it in and it functions," but you
yeah.
almost get accustomed to it because it slowly happens, and we gotta go, "Just like, something's wrong, like, you gotta do something different." Yeah, dang, that's crazy. So I know even recently, at one of the events we were at together, for a ministry event, you had even shared part of your testimony, and I know you talked about how there was a season. I believe it was like in your 20s that you really went to that dark period where you not only were experiencing addiction, but you also really considered taking your own life. Will you talk a little bit about that and like what was kind of happening that kind of led to the culmination of that moment?
Yeah, so I went to the military after high school. So I was 17 when I left, turned 18 in boot camp. So I went to the military for about 4 years, but I was still, a knucklehead. I was still partying all the time, like 6 days a week. I was just living that lifestyle. Yeah, it was
You were the
bad.
fun guy, but it wasn't the healthiest thing for you.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was fun until it wasn't fun,
sure.
And, so then I got out, and when I got out of the military, I came back home, and all my friends, even the same one that introduced me to all these
Introduced you?
things, I
Yeah,
tied back up with him because he was my best friend. And that's when the OxyContin,
big.
whole yeah,
Mhm.
it was starting to
Yeah.
grow, it was just starting to be everywhere, and so I kinda fell into that, and like I said, had just done mostly, like, all these other things that I would just go out and be social. This was more of something that would bring everything just down, and that was the one that it became something that my body needed
Right,
eventually.
right.
And so when I got into that, um, that's when I started to see things kinda spiral, and I would just go to work, but if I wasn't getting that before I went to work, then I wouldn't go to work. I needed it to function in everyday life, to do
Sure.
anything,
Yeah.
spending all my money, and it really just kinda consumed me until everything kinda fell apart. I lost my job. And then, my relationships, and I was still kinda hiding everything, and, I don't know if you heard in the testimony, but my mom said I got really sick, and so I did.
Oh, yeah.
My lung so one side of my lung stopped working, and then I only had half of my left lung that was still working. They said I would have probably drowned in just the liquid in my lungs.
Like the fluid in your
That
lungs, yeah.
night, yeah, if they didn't come in, because I was in extreme pain the whole day and I didn't know what was going on. and nobody knew what I was doing, and so I had to call my mom and I said, "Hey, like, I feel extreme pain. I don't know what it is," and so they took me to the hospital. I had, like, 105 fever. Every time I breathed, it was like the worst pain I could feel. And what the doctor said was the pain I was feeling was when your lungs contract, they're lubricated. Mine weren't
Mhm.
for some reason, so it would stick to my chest cavity and rip off every time I would breathe. And that was the pain that I was feeling. And so they ended up having to get all the liquid out of my lungs. They gave me a bronchoscopy, which means they go in and scrape your throat and look
Oof.
down there and see what's going on in your lungs. And yeah, I was in the ICU for a while, and that's when it kind of all came out that I was using something. You know, I had to
Were
tell
you
my
afraid of
family.
that? Like, going in, were you afraid, like, "Oh, this is gonna be the moment they're gonna test me and find out that I was taking stuff?"
It was, and even then, I didn't tell them the whole truth. They didn't, because
Really?
I graduated from pills, oxy cotton pills, to actual heroin, and so I was doing that more so when I got sick, and so they didn't know that at the time, but I did kinda tell them, like, "Yeah, I am using pills or something," you know?
Mm,
And so
yeah.
I was nervous, but I still kinda was able to tell some stories to kinda downplay it. I almost died, so they're not gonna be very hard on me, like,
Right, you kinda
in
used the
my
moment
head.
like, "Hey, I'm
Yeah,
okay though, but I made some bad decisions." Yeah.
yeah, and so, in Kalina, I don't think I got out of the hospital, and I was probably clean for a month. Still, while my lungs, they said I was gonna have asthma for the rest of my life, and I went back to it right away, like, within a month, and I was still recovering from all this and everything, and that's the kinda hold that stuff had on my life. Like, it wouldn't let me go. I was literally in chains when
Yeah.
I was on that stuff, and so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's kinda what
You
happened with
know
that.
you know that it's life-threatening, but you also know that for some reason your body's like, "That's what I need to live." Isn't that
Mhm.
crazy? Like, you
Yeah.
know it can hurt you, but your brain is signaling, "No, you just need this to keep going." And when you get that hold, it's like you have to almost you're not just undoing the brain pattern, you have to, like, remove yourself from that completely and then almost force yourself to set a new pattern. But I think people just say things like, if you're in addiction, you just gotta be strong enough and just decide you're gonna, like, stop, or you gotta just tell yourself you're done, right? But it's not that simple. Every person I've ever talked to that struggled with addiction has said, like, "I had to admit it. I had to get support. I had to go through some rehabilitation. I had to like make really hard decisions because clearly I couldn't get out of that on my own. But I think I love that you even shared like a lot of people are living that lie in secret and they'll tell themselves, well, I'm just not going to tell people because I'm not doing that much. Or at some point, I'll just stop when I want to. But I feel like, and I would love for you to share your opinion, like the things we keep in secret slowly just get a bigger hold on us, right? And then before you're in it so deep. It's like, how are you going to come out of it unless you like have that really moment where you kind of, open up to other people and invite people into that space with you?
Yeah, I mean, they talk about that, that just the whole size shape in your heart that you try to fill and you try to fill with all these things. And I did that. I tried to fill it. And for a while, it was my identity. I was the guy that would, you know, I actually didn't become even though I think I drank more in high school than I did when I became 21 because I was doing so many drugs instead. And so I became the guy that would just do drugs and not really drink, and I would just be high everywhere I went, and it just became my identity to myself. It was just like, "Oh, you can handle it. You're good. You're a functioning addict, and it's fine,
Right.
and you got
Yeah.
it all in control." But yeah, everything was slowly crumbling on the outside, and
Wow.
people,
That's
I
wild.
could keep it. I could live a double life. I was pretty good at it for a while
Mm-hmm.
until, it did come out, and I
Until
couldn't
it
do it
came to,
anymore. So
yeah.
I just disappeared. I
Really.
disappeared from my family, yeah.
Wow. So
It
they
was
knew at
bad.
that point something was happening, but they didn't know the depth of it. And then you just kind of what MIA for a while so that you could kind of just live the life you wanted to live.
Yeah, I had to. Well, because I would get kicked out of everybody's house, and I could
Okay.
always go to my
Yeah.
grandma, she would let me stay there and stuff, but finally, I was just like, "You know what? I just gotta go, and whatever that means, whatever that looks like, I'm fine with it because I'll be able to live this lifestyle." And so I ended up on the streets for a good 3 years. Slept in cars, slept in park restrooms, slept in parks on the slides. I parked in, yeah, I it was in I went all around Redlands, you know, but I actually had to get out of Redlands because the police knew me, everybody knew me, so when they saw me walking around, they would stop me every time. So I went to San Bernardino, and I was living in the streets there, and I lived in a car that didn't even work for about a year, probably a little over a year. Went through all the seasons, cold, really hot during the summer,
Yeah.
and it was a crazy, crazy
And it never,
lifestyle to
like,
live.
hit you, like, sitting in that car, let's say in, like, 104-degree summer, it never hit you like, "I don't wanna be here," or did it hit you and you just felt like, "I don't know how to change it?"
But yeah, it would hit me a lot, you know, but once your life's so consumed, you know, you kinda have blinders on. You know it's bad, I was in and out of jail, you know, once I
Yeah.
got arrested the first time, it just
Mhm.
was a chain reaction because now I was on
Yeah.
probation, and every time they stop you, they can search you, and
To
so I
avoid
went
getting
to
checked.
jail so many times, yeah, and even and I would get clean, I would have to, what they call it, kicking the drugs, so you withdraw, and I would have to do it every time I went to jail, get out, and thankfully my family would try. They would try, because they loved me and they wanted to see me do good. So every time I would get out of jail, they would be there and
Yeah.
say, "Okay, get it
"This
right.
is the
We'll take you to
time."
your
Yeah.
community service. We'll take you to
Yeah.
court. We'll take you." And I would do all the necessary things I needed to get that going until I just figured out how to go get what I really wanted. And again, it was just my identity. That's what I saw myself as somebody that could live that lifestyle because for whatever twisted reason for me it was something that, like you said, like sin's enjoyable. And but it's a lie that we believe. It's a lie that we believe, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not fun, but it's the
Yeah.
lie that we believe that it is fun.
Right.
It's pleasure.
Well,
It's
in
gonna
the
give you.
moment, it feels good, but it's not really actually a fun life. Like, living in your car and being addicted to something is not fun,
No,
right? But the
no,
high
no.
feels fun in the moment, but you're right, it's kind of like it's a misconception because you
It
feel
is.
something euphoric for a moment, but then it actually doesn't give you what you want. Totally.
Yeah, you could so I could be sitting in a park restroom where I'm gonna sleep for the night, and
Yeah.
hopefully nobody comes and gets me and everything, but as long as I'm high, life is good. Like,
Yeah.
that's a whole misconception. That's a
Yeah. Like,
big
that's not the
lie that
life
I'm
that we
just
need to be
sitting.
living.
Yeah, it's just, and
Yeah.
people, unfortunately, that's where they're at.
They do it all the time. So
Yeah.
take us to that moment where I know I've heard a little piece of this, but I would love for people to kinda get this part of your story where, if I'm right, like, you were really in a bad place, and I think you ended up at, like, a hotel, right? And somehow, by the grace of God, like, the Lord sent your family to come looking for you. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, so, it was January 10th, 2015, and the day before my mom's birthday. I had been going through a lot as far as just my head, my state of mind, my addiction, just the lifestyle I was living. I was feeling a lot of pain, a lot of guilt, a lot of
Mhm.
shame, more so than I've ever. A lot of things were happening that they were taking like my avenues for money that I would be able to. Because if you think
Usually
about
get.
it, yeah, I had no job, I had nothing, no car, and yet I still had to come up with money every single day for over 5 years. I had to come up with money somehow every single day. There was probably maybe 10 times that, I didn't go a day without getting money. So you think about that lifestyle. Well, all the avenues I was getting was shutting, just closing, boom, door shut, door shut. Can't get money that way anymore. I can't go into this store. I can't do this. I can't do that. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. It's never been like that this whole time. And that a lot of things were happening even during that time. um, there was a point where I was so hungry. I hadn't eaten, but the stores, the 7-Elevens, all the stores that were open around me where I was staying, they wouldn't let me in the store
Because
because
they
they
knew you
knew
were
I
gonna
would
steal.
steal or
Mhm.
something. So I couldn't even go into these stores to steal food. And so I remember sitting there one time and I'm like, I'm so hungry. Like, I remember there was a mobile home park and there was one of the vending machines, and I was like, I've never wanted to break a vending machine so bad, but I know there's cameras everywhere. I would go to jail immediately. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that, but I'm so hungry, and I couldn't get any food. And I was just like, I was just sitting there thinking like, "Man, I've never felt this before." And things were just going on, I was feeling very tortured when I was awake.
Mhm,
Around the people I was around, they were very shady, very just different people coming in and out, like, from the streets, and I felt a lot of evil around me. Even though I didn't
mhm,
know it was evil, I didn't know what it was just weird feelings all around me. Where I used to feel comfortable on the streets, I wasn't feeling comfortable. And finally, cried out to the Lord one time in Redlands. I was next to a railroad tracks. I remember too, and I just I didn't really know what I was asking or even talking to God about, but I just said, "Is this it? Is this all that my life was supposed to be?" It's like
mhm,
I don't know what to do. And that was that. I cried and that was it. And that day I had enough. I couldn't g I was tortured staying awake. If I fell asleep, I was scared something was gonna happen to me. I was gonna get
yeah,
robbed, killed, or something, and
yeah,
so I couldn't be awake and I couldn't be asleep. Like, it was a horrible way to live, and it took its toll. I was remembering during that time so many people that I've hurt, even when I
mhm,
was in elementary, middle school, old girlfriends, old friends that I had done wrong or I had hurt. And that had never happened before, and I was like and that's why I think where all the shame and guilt were coming on me because of I was just remembering all these things that I hadn't thought about in forever,
for years.
and I was yeah, for years, and that was getting me to be like, "I'm no good. I'm no good living. I'm no good to anybody. I shouldn't be here. Nobody's gonna miss me." And so my plan that day was I got my EBT that day and I would always sell it. And I was going to get money at 10 a.m. I was going to go sell it at 10 a.m. My plan was just to get as much drug, spend it all, get as
Mhm,
much as I could and do it so that I would just go to sleep and hopefully I wouldn't wake up. And that was my plan at 10 a.m. And at 7 a.m., I got a knock on the door of my motel that day. And it was my sister, my mom, and my grandmother. And, you know, they found me somehow through somebody that had seen me walking on the streets, and they walked around with my picture to all the little motels, and the guy knew me because I would always go
yeah.
and sell him gift cards and stuff for to get rooms. He would
You
let
were the
me do
hustler,
that.
huh? You were like, "I got
Yeah,
EBT, I got"
e
yeah.
exactly, and that's
And
how I would get
that's
rooms.
such a thing, like, I've obviously been in ministry for years, and I've worked with a lot of people who've had, like, similar addictions, and they will say, like, "Man, we sold our food cards, we sold anything that we could. People gave us stuff, we would turn around and sell it because we just needed to get what we needed to get." And so I always tell people, like, "You gotta be careful too, even giving gift cards," because they'll be like, "No, I gave them gift cards to Stater Brothers." I'm like, "Yeah, they probably sold that for cash and bought drugs."
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
exactly,
they
and
didn't buy
that's what I
groceries.
would have to do, you know?
Yeah.
And, I mean, luckily, that guy knew me enough,
Wow.
like, I was there all the time that he told my sister, "Yeah, he's here," and they actually showed him what room I was in and everything,
Hmm.
um, and she tells the crazy story that she knows everybody, which she does, she's very popular in
Yeah, your
Redlands,
family
and
seems awesome. They seem like they'll be the type to come, like, knock your door down and be like, "We
Yeah.
here, open up." Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
and
it.
so the cop that got called was one of her friends, and so they were able to take
Mhm,
me even though I was on probation, they allowed me
mhm.
to just go with them, and then
Yeah,
they knew about the ranch, and so I called and they had a bed, and, it took me a little bit to be like, "Okay, let me go to a Christian ranch for a year," like, after I have all this, like even though I was done, I was
yeah,
tired, I was sick and tired,
yeah.
I still didn't wanna make that decision, you know?
Sure, it's a he well,
And
that's a whole life change, yeah, and just explain to
yeah.
this, so, like, when he says the ranch, the River's Edge Ranch is, that program I told you, that drug and alcohol rehab program, but you have to commit to a year of living on the ranch and working on the ranch to work towards your sobriety. It's not like a 90-day in and out. So for you to go from like living this whole lifestyle to your family comes in the nick of time and goes, "Hey, it's time." I'm sure that was a hard decision in the state that you were in to be like, "Do I want to commit to this whole thing for a year?" That's huge.
Yeah, and it was just a strange time too because I was really going through some demonic things. I had opened doors for the enemy to come in and Satan to just torment me, and I was hearing things, I was seeing things, I was hearing voices, and so it was. I mean, the mind state I was in was just it was very chaotic, and so to make that decision, you know, now I know that it was the Lord drawing me. And I always say when I give my testimonies that the plan for my destruction was on its way. Like it was set in motion. I could feel it. And that's why everything was happening for me. That's why I was feeling all the guilt and remembering all the things that I had done to people and to make me feel that way. But I also say that the Lord's plan was also set in motion at the
Yep.
same time. And
Yep.
so the Lord was drawing me in.
Come
And,
on.
and once I got to the ranch and I finally made that decision and I got there, I felt something different. I was around men that were also struggling with the same thing, but had been there
Right.
for a while, so they
Yeah.
were kind of all on fire for the Lord and very kind and very nice. And I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is different, but I'm
You're like, "This is a
scared. I'm still
different vibe
nervous.
than the guys on the street in San
Yeah,
Bernardino." Yeah.
yeah,
Now,
and it
were
would
you
come.
were you like a Christian? Like, were you raised with Christian beliefs, or was like when you went to the ranch, was that the first time you were introduced to Jesus?
I would say I was Christian by default, because my family, that would be the thing that we would do. My grandma was a Christian. I had been to Catholic churches here and there. My grandma would take us to church, but it was never something that I would go to youth
Pose
group
for
too.
yourself.
With my
Yeah.
girlfriend in high school, I would
Really?
go with her to youth group and stuff, but I always thought it was weird. I always thought
Really?
because, I mean, look at me. At 14, I was already doing all these crazy things. So I go to youth group and I'm just like, oh, these kids are worshiping God, and
Yeah.
it's a little weird, but
You were
I'm
t
here for
very
her.
different worlds. Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
understand.
and so
Yeah.
that's kind of my mindset, but I never had a personal relationship. I knew the
Relationship.
stories. I knew David and Goliath. I knew Noah's Ark. I knew
Yeah.
why
The
we
popular ones.
celebrated Easter. Yeah, I
Sure.
knew these stories, but I really
Sure.
didn't know. So I would
Wow.
say yes, I was introduced at the
Yeah.
Rivers Edge Ranch
How long
to
did that
Jesus.
take, like, from the time you got to the ranch and you're obviously I can't even imagine those, there's, like, that blackout period where you can't have, like, access to people, you don't get to leave, you don't get to have phone, right? Like, at what point did you feel like you could feel your head clearing enough to even kinda really make a decision to go, "Hey, maybe I need to actually, like, believe in Jesus and let him help me through this?"
I would say at the end of my first month into my
Mhm.
second month.
Wow.
It was very divine, I say, because when I got there, they have prayer time, they have worship time, they have Bible studies, right? And for me, I'm still in this chaotic mindset, but I'm just like, okay, I'm here. I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to pray. So when they pray, I'm just going to copy them. When they worship, I'm just going to read the words off the thing, like whatever. It doesn't mean anything to me, but I'm just going to do it. And when it's time for Bible study, I'll just listen.
Mhm.
And eventually I started just reading through the Bible. Somebody told me start with the book of John. So I was like, okay, I would read. And what surprised me was that I was understanding a lot of it. Obviously I didn't know what a Pharisee was or a
Sure.
Sadducee or,
Sure.
that stuff, but
Yeah.
I could make it past that. I
Mhm.
was it was making sense to me, like
Yeah.
what Jesus was saying in John and what the disciples were and what they were doing. So I was like, that alone was a shock to me that I could understand because I always thought it was just some old book that was I wouldn't understand, right?
Yeah,
Like
with some
I've
dust on
turned
it,
to
people's
it during
houses.
those Gideon Bibles in the hotels and motels. Like I would flip them open and be like,
Yeah.
nope, like shut
Yeah.
it. Like I don't understand that. I probably turned to like numbers or something.
Yeah, right, the wrong book,
And
sure.
so and so
The Gideon
during
Bibles,
that
that gives
time,
me flashbacks, that's hilarious. We used to
yeah,
always pay to
they're
put those Gideon Bibles in hotels, they would come around and ask for donations. We'd be
oh
like,
yeah.
"Yes," we would always give it to Gideon, and my parents would always say, "All it takes is one person who's having a bad place in a hotel to open that Bible." But the truth is, maybe that wasn't your story, but there might be somebody who flips open to that right
Oh,
point, right? And, we'd be
I
like, we plant that
guarantee.
seed, right?
I guarantee there's been many that have done
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, we love the Gideons.
For me, yeah, it just wasn't that.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
but I do believe the Lord was showing himself. It's just I
Yeah.
didn't it's kinda like when you talk to somebody on the phone constantly and then you finally
Mhm.
meet them and you're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, now I have a face to
Face to a
the
name.
voice,"
Mhm.
or the name,
Yeah.
and so when I was reading John, that's the kind of emotion I was feeling. I was like, "Oh
Love
my
it.
gosh, like this is so much of my life being showed to me like a mirror almost." And to the point where I thought this had a little bit to do with my chaotic mindset, but I thought somebody was playing a joke on me. That this Bible wasn't real. Like, how is it making so much sense, and how is it speaking to me so much? And so when we were doing Bible studies, we'd have to sit next to each other and everybody had their Bible. And so when people would get up, I would grab their Bible, flip to where I was, and see if it said the same thing because
Wow.
that's how much it was
The
like,
Lord was speaking
uh,
to you, but you're like, "There's
yeah,
no friggin'
speaking to
way."
me, but
Yeah.
freaking me out. It
Wow.
was kind of
That's
like
so
it was.
cool.
And
Yeah.
so I
So
told my
God
mentor that
literally,
and he
like,
laughed.
made himself real to you. Like, it wasn't just some
100%.
cool speaker. It wasn't just that one verse you learned. Like, he showed you, like, "No, Rick, this is me. I'm actually here and I'm speaking to you."
It was in
Wow.
the book of John, and once I finished John, there was nothing in me that could deny that Jesus was
But
real
Jesus real.
and what he
Wow.
did. And after that, it was done. I was
So
sold
cool.
sold out,
Wow.
and that's where it went.
So
And then it was
you
just a journey after that.
Yeah, then it's all the hard stuff, right? You found
I
Jesus,
mean,
but there's a lot of unpacking to do because there's a lot of things that happen leading up to those points, right?
very annoyed with me because after that, my I would probably ask 20 questions per Bible study.
Wow.
What is a Sadducee? What is a Pharisee? Like, what were they doing? Like, what does
They're
that
like,
mean?
"Shut
What
up,
did
Rick. We're trying to get
Yeah.
down."
What's a gnat, and why would you strain the gnat and swallow the camel? Like, what does that mean, Like,
Yeah.
all the
But you were
parables,
hungry
everything.
for
I
something,
was
like you
so
wanted more and the Lord was gonna meet you there. So
Yeah,
cool.
and you know what's interesting? So when I told you that, that plan was in motion, the enemy was just reminding me, "Oh, you did this, you did this, you did this." What
Yeah.
the Lord showed me early on too, he's like, I was allowing that to happen. There's a verse in the Bible that says, talks about the woman that washes Jesus's feet, and the Pharisees, and they're all, talking their mess and like, "Oh, you
Yeah.
would let her do this?" And he's
Why
like,
would she pour the perfume, the expensive perfume on your
"Yeah."
feet? Yeah.
And Jesus said, "She's been forgiven much, so she loves much. Those that have been forgiven little love little." And what he showed me when I read that verse, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like I was allowing that to happen. For you to remember
Mhm.
everybody you did wrong, every bridge you burned, everything you stole, everything. I was allowing you to relive that. The enemy was trying to use it to
Sure.
condemn you, but
Sure.
I was going to show you how much you were going to be forgiven for when you realized what my son did for you. And I mean, it brought me to tears when I just realized that's why I felt that way. That's why I was remembering all that stuff, that I
Yeah.
would know I would know how much I was because I
Right.
knew drugs were bad. I knew that, but I didn't really understand how much of a sinner I was until I started reading the Bible, and
Hmm.
then
Then it all
but that
just
just
came.
allowed me to understand the grace of God and the mercy of
Yep.
God and the forgiveness of
Come
God and
on.
the love of God. And so
Come
that's
on.
kind of the big revelations
I
that I
love
was
it.
having within a
But that's
month.
but that's where he also allowed you to get there. Like, you had to go through quite a bit, right? But he allowed your family to show up that night at the hotel. He allowed that phone call for them to not take you in, but to stay there and to be able to get to that next step because he knew what he had ahead of you, but you still had to make the choice to say yes, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
always the decisions that we make that are going to set us up for the future, you know? But because of your yes that day, you were able to go through that program, not only get sober, stay sober, but then years later, turn around and work for that same program to now help other people get restored and find that. Like, that has to make you feel proud. I mean, I hope that you're proud of who you've become.
I am. I am. I'm grateful. I'm humbled. I'm glad that the Lord's been able to just use me as a vessel in this
He
type of
does.
ministry, in this type of
Mhm.
way, because I fell in love with the ranch. I fell in love with the ministry of helping men, young, and going from we allow 18-year-old to 65-year-olds, and I've been
Yeah.
able to minister to both and
All of
everything in
them.
between. And
Yeah.
it's like the Lord just wants to use you, and
Yep.
He just wants you to be available. That's it,
Yep.
to pour into
Yep.
whoever. And
And
so
who
I've been
better than
blessed to have
somebody
that.
who actually has walked that out? Like, I can imagine coming in to the ranch and, let's say you're a 50-year-old guy and you've had addiction your whole life, and then someone trying to tell you, like, "You're gonna get through this, and we're gonna introduce you to Jesus, it's gonna be okay," and you're like, "Whatever," right? And then someone like Rick
hmm
comes on and goes, "Now I've sat in your seat," right? You understand the feelings, you understand the withdrawals, you understand the frustrations, you understand the commitment, but, like, you're actually being able to come in as a visual of hope, of, like, You don't have to be where you're at because I'm living proof of that. And I think we need more people like you, not just sharing their testimony, but also turning around and helping the ones that are coming after us because they will relate to you in a way that maybe somebody wouldn't even relate to me just because that wasn't my story, because they actually believe, like, well, if he did it for you, he might do it for me too. Like, if God brought you through that, he'll probably bring me, right? And I love that you even had the heart to like continue to sow into that because, there may have been a seasons that you look back and wish you could have done differently, but I'm sure the latter part of your life, you will bring more people to sobriety and to Jesus than even the seasons that you wish you could have redone, right? Like there will be more that you do for the kingdom than the times that you didn't know him, but God uses, that's why that scripture says God uses all things to work together for our good. Like we wish you didn't have to go through that. I wish so badly you didn't have to walk that season. But for whatever reason, it was allowed and it's built you into the man that you are today, who now gets to be a game changer for the kingdom to help other people come into that. Like that's what we need, right? We need more people just going, hey, I wasn't perfect either, but let me tell you what God has done for me and he'll do it for you, because that's what's going to shift even this younger generation to know none of us are perfect. We all
Yeah.
make mistakes. We all go through seasons where I was just talking to one of my high school girls about that. She was like, so many of us hide stuff because we're afraid. And I'm like, you don't realize how many of us adults have done the same things, right? But when
Mhm.
we just get real with people, we do life with people, it leads them into this space where they can come out of some of those things. And so I want to kind of close with this. And I thank you so much for coming on
Yeah,
and sharing, even just
absolutely.
I know a part of your story. But what would be your like advice? Let's say there's a younger person listening to this and they say, I am an addiction, or they don't even know it yet, but they're just kind of dabbling into some things. What advice would you give them, even in that entrance to go, are these choices we really should making and do they really impact my life in the long run?
Yeah, I think it would be, um, d not to be a follower, like, not to follow the crowd, follow who you think is, a cool crowd or with the fear of just being of missing out, right? Or not being invited to that party or not being invited to here or there, because in the long run, that's not what's important. Honestly, I wish I would have known that or somebody would have told me that before, is that if you can think on your own and make your own decisions, nobody's coming with you through life. You're going to know these people. They may be friends for a long time, they may be friends for a short time, but I did a lot of things to prove something to people that I don't even know or talk to anymore.
Crazy.
And not even back then, it didn't last very long. And it was just something that I became a people pleaser. I became always wanting to be a part of something. But it was all a lie that I believed. It's like I just didn't know who I was. And so when you don't know who you are, and if you don't know the truth, you're going to believe all the lies. And so I would obviously suggest, hey, pick
Mm,
up the Bible. Pick up
yeah.
the Bible and see, try something different. Maybe if you're not feeling enough, or if you're not feeling, wanted or needed or loved or accepted or something by your peers, Jesus says, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, that I will give you rest for your souls. Come learn from me, and I will
Hmm.
teach you these things that and it's something that, you know, it's not spoke about a lot, because of the way the culture is right now and everything that's just going on with social
Hmm.
media. There's just so much happening that the devil has his hands in,
Yeah.
but it's not talked about, right? Like, it's just
Yeah.
culture. It's just what it is now. We had our own culture back then when I was in high school and all that stuff. Um, but, who you surround yourself with tells a lot about who you are. And if you constantly are ashamed or you don't feel good about yourself or something, it's okay to stop, take a self-examination and just look
Hmm.
at yourself, and
Yeah.
then talk to somebody that you trust. Talk to
There you
somebody
go.
that's older that may have been through things, may have been, even if it's not your parents, maybe your parents feel like, you feel a little weird telling them stuff. Some parents, you feel very comfortable, their
Yeah.
children will feel comfortable saying it, but sometimes you
Sure.
don't. Find somebody
Hmm.
that you trust and just,
Yeah.
tell them what you're going through. Ask them
I
some
love it.
questions, and you'll never know what kind of nuggets of wisdom could change everything, change the trajectory of your life. And that's something I
Absolutely.
never really got to do, was find somebody older that I trusted enough to
Hmm.
say, "Hey, this is what's going on in my life. Like, what do you think about it? Like, what am I doing the right thing or not?" And unfortunately, that didn't happen for me, but they're out there. There's people out there, like, obviously you're very involved in the
We're
youth
becoming
and
those people
right?
for this next
Yeah,
generation. Yeah, I tell people all
yeah,
the time, I'm
and
like, people need, especially this younger ones, they need people they can come to. They need people they can be real with, right? And like you said, it like that may be that thing where we go, hey, what about this? Let's try this. Hey, come to this. Like just even being able to talk about those things and to not feel shame, right? Like I tell people all the time, we all fall short of the glory of God. So
yeah,
don't let the shame of like, I don't want to tell my family or I don't want to tell someone because they're gonna think bad about me. Like I actually respect people more when they come to me and they're like, "Hey, I'm struggling with this," because that
mhm,
shows me they really want help. And then my heart is like, how can I help them? I never am like, ooh, tainted. Like, that's never
yeah,
my response, right? So even if you're listening to this and you're like, I could never tell someone, yes, you can. But if you stay in
yeah,
those secret
absolutely.
places, if you stay in those same circles of people and you surround yourself with the wrong thing, you're going to end up in a space you don't want to be. So maybe today your challenge is to get real, find somebody you trust and allow Jesus to be a part of your journey. Look at if he could take Rick from that to who he is today, he did it for him, he'll do it for you too. And so I hope that if you're listening to this that you feel encouraged that you are not stuck and I hope that if you're being curious in this season and looking at little doors and thinking they're not going to affect you, that you will also realize your choices matter. And so, even something that feels small and might feel fun in the moment may not really bring the outcome you want. So, be wise. Think about the decisions before you make because it matters for sure.
Amen.
Heck
Amen,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, dude. I appreciate you. I'm so grateful for your testimony. I know that you're going to continue to use it for God's glory, but thank you for sharing a little bit with our listeners today.
Awesome, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, Break the Box. Well, we love y'all. Thank you so much for taking some time to listen. We pray you're encouraged today. We pray the Lord will continue to remind you that He's with you and walking with you. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. I hope you were encouraged today. Listen, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder. We are streaming Break the Box on all platforms. So on podcasts, on Apple, on Spotify, but we also have a YouTube channel. If you would like to actually watch the videos, please go and not just follow us, but subscribe to the channel. Not only do we upload all of the episodes of Break the Box podcast, but I also put up shorts and some encouragements during the week. I'm also on all social media platforms. So if you'd like to follow me on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, it's a great way to stay connected and get more content. Listen, I couldn't do this without so many incredible people who follow and support this and also spread and share the love. So thank you so much for everybody who not only listens, but writes comments, messages. It means the world to me. And a huge thank you to any people who also support this podcast. I am so blessed by people who feel the heart of Jesus to reach other people with me. And so if you give, I just want to say thank you so much. I have a link in my show notes. It is called Buy Me a Coffee. If you want to contribute, great. You don't have to. I will just take you listening in the support of your heart. But if you feel led to give, I'm so grateful. Listen, this is a space to reach more people for Jesus. And so if in any way you are praying for me or supporting or giving, you get to be a part of the reward of that. So thank you so much. I love y'all, and I'll see you next week.